Greetings to those of you who tune in, either voice or video and voice on YouTube. Thanks for joining us, and also what a lovely thing to be able to be here together. For me, I know for a lot of you, like, I would be anywhere else but here. I sometimes forget that. And this morning's message is sort of right in that direction. I have a series of topics that I am obedient to. They come up in rotation. I develop them myself, so they're mine. I can't really complain about them, but then when they come up, some of them I wrestle with more than others. This week, I have just been to the mat with the subject of the week, and I have a long drive on Sunday mornings, and even this morning was completely incoherent, so pray for me that I won't be completely incoherent this morning. You don't want to be here, I'm struggling. The topic is acceptance. Ha ha ha. Pretty funny. It's not that I don't know what to say, it's that I don't know how to prune all the different things that I would have to say about the subject of acceptance. It's central in mental health care, in philosophy and wisdom teachings and theology, in addiction recovery, and probably other areas. It's a big subject area. And then what occurred to me about halfway through my drive was just focus it on today and the moment and why we're here. So, first of all, this is Caron Treatment Centers, and the mission of the organization is, this organization is called into being with the vision of helping persons and families where the phenomenon of addiction as manifest find new life and freedom and to become useful and productive members of society. That's one of the Narcotics Anonymous phrases. But to no longer be trapped in the death spiral of addiction, and to find your way not only back to sort of nominal function, but then to move on beyond nominal function, to have a great life. And what a wonderful thing to be able to be a person who gets to pair themselves up with an organization that has that kind of mission and value. Right? It's a cool thing, it's a noble thing that called this place into being. And Dick and Catherine Caron, whose grave sites are right over there, have left this incredible legacy of this place, which probably they would just be shocked to see what it looks like today, given how small and humble the beginnings were on this mountain, and even in their family home down at the bottom of the hill over 70 years ago, I think. Yeah, the organization has a long history and a noble purpose, but it has it in relation to this crazy thing, addiction. And one of the characteristic stumbling blocks of the addictive journey for a person in a family system is accepting that it's really what's going on. And in fact, I think in the regular curriculum of the lectures on the mornings on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday at 8:30, I think there's still a denial lecture. And the joke, denial's not a river in Egypt. Like the subject and this pairing of acceptance and denial is helpful, right? I either get it or I don't. I either am or I am not. But I also think it's oversimplified, because addiction is a beast. And for the family member, like, people used to say to me, why is it that so many, especially in teen care, when you see teen and young adult treatment for addiction, you see this high percentage of male patients versus female patients. And I have this theory that it's harder for a family to think their young girl, their daughter has an addiction issue, and easier for them to make the decision that the daughter has some sort of like mental health crisis or whatever, rather than sort of like, and if you think about the stigma of addiction, it's so, alcoholic or addict or junkie or dope fiend, whatever, like these terms that apply to people like me are hard to swallow. I don't like that they fit who I used to be, but they do, and it's important for me to remember today, with a number of years of abstinence, that I still can manifest this characteristic kind of entrapment in my behaviors and relationships, even if I'm not drinking or using drugs. And that's part of my acceptance journey. Part of my acceptance journey is I still am an addict. I don't know, like, how more clearly I could accept that, and yet over the decades of my abstinence and sobriety and recovery, what I've had to do is sort of acknowledge yet another layer of the onion. That's one of these phrases in the recovery community. I'm doing pretty well with gambling, but so I can use that as an example. Like, gambling has not been ever, well, I've never been to a Gamblers Anonymous meeting. I don't believe I need to go to one, but, and I don't think I'm even like in denial about that, but I would just say, like, we exist in a world where that has been so normalized that it's shocking to me. With the eyes that I have, I remember I used to say to my wife when I first moved up here and started working here, almost every TV commercial break includes an ad for some sort of gambling experience. And like the other day, I was in a convenience store of some brand or other, and I was watching some person who, in my estimation, shouldn't have been blowing money on lottery tickets standing in front of the machine. They were in front of the machine when I came in the store, and I took some time in the store, and then on the way out, they were still in front of the machine. And I had this glee about it because this is predation in my mind. This is the state and federal government like deciding to prey on people who have an affliction. And oh yes, we fund all kinds of great stuff, school programs and all sorts of stuff with this money, but we take it from people who don't have the wellness to be able to recognize that this is just bait. This is like dangling a line of cocaine in front of a person who and fortunately, as a society, we do that too. I mean, the beer commercials and all that sort of stuff. We are bombarded with invitations to soothe and please and avoid, and addiction is so prevalent as a kind of narrative of not like, well, everybody does it, don't worry about it, that I think it's really hard to come to the point of saying, for me, this is a problem. I can't safely drink. In fact, I circulate a good bit with people who I really watch can, and it annoys me that they can, but I've told this story before here. I remember watching my wife when she and I started dating. This is my second marriage. I was counting her drinks because, of course, I'm an alcoholic and I'm paying attention to me. Not finishing a drink is alcohol abuse. And then I had it all figured out. She was drinking 6 to 8 alcoholic beverages a month, which is like, what? And then it occurred to me, I wanted to say to her, God, if I could drink like you, I would drink every day. And this is the essence of my wiring being profoundly different than her. That made complete sense to me. I mean, that's like, I must accept that I am an alcoholic. I am an addict. This is who I am. And it's hard, I think, at some level, especially on the early ramp on, to come to grips with it. At who, when, where, with, how much, what, those questions that they get. Like, one of the tasks that we have as a treatment center is to help people come to awareness of the gravitas of the circumstances that bring them here. You would think by the time you get admitted to treatment and you have the wristband, it should be a no-brainer. But not always. In fact, there are probably people here sitting in the room who are like, I'm pretty sure I don't need to be here. And like, so, and then there's a whole series of questions. And then it can be really shocking if you're the clinician. And it's like, well, have you ever been to treatment before? Yeah, 2 or 3 times. And you're sure you're not need to be here. So anyway, I'm not trying to make fun of anyone. It's just a peculiar characteristic of the human personality construction that we can hold at bay what to other people seems an obvious truth, and it's not clear what exactly it is. Will it be the tears of a loved one, or the algorithm of the 11 characteristics and criteria? Is it science that's going to persuade you to need to be here, or is it like watching somebody else? So there's tons of ways in which all of a sudden one gets the, okay, I concede the point. I'm an alcoholic, I'm an addict, and it might be gambling, shopping, internet use, phone. Sadly, I'm sorry, most of us are addicted to our phones. And this is the other thing, is that it's so prevalent. I don't know why we're so still married to this notion of having this incredible stigma with a person who's got it with alcohol, when it's a societal norm that we have it with these devices, right? Or social media. God, how did we get where we are? Anyway, land the plane, Jack. So, addiction is an issue of acceptance. The two things I wanted to say, I'm going to crash them together because I know there's a ton of other stuff I want to take. I just asked everybody else to share time. I'll try to do it myself. Wider and deeper, lower and slower and longer. Those were the two things I want to mash together. You have this initial thing. Okay, I'm an addict. I'm coming to treatment for alcohol, for cocaine, for fentanyl, for weed, for gambling, for sex, whatever it is. You have a presenting issue. And it has been this huge thing that you find well, at least I'm here getting treatment for this. And then you go to some lecture or you listen to some preacher on the chapel service who says, this is wider and deeper. And you're like, no, it's not. And this was me. At the beginning of my recovery, I went to the 12-step well because I totally knew I needed to stop substances. And I had that in my mind as a contained issue. That I lived in this fiction of the idea that if that the same person could be me and stop drinking and using. Well, that's impossible, actually, in terms of what I see now. I cannot be the same person in the same social world with the same situation, with the same, and take and amputate this coping mechanism that has been enabled by the world in which I circulate. Because it dysregulates me and dysregulates everybody around me, and we have to find some new normal, even if that's the only one major change like that in a life will ricochet and ripple out and cause all kinds of other changes, even if you're fortunate enough to have that really be the only way you're presenting with addiction phenomenon sufficient to be causing enough harm to be worth addressing. So, as you journey in recovery, which I hope you all will, and family members have a journey in recovery just as much as the person who's addicted to substances, the scope of applicability will widen in ways that as a newcomer you just really cannot see. I don't mean to play some elitist card or whatever, but also I couldn't see it. I could never have imagined, first of all, what does faith have to do with it? I didn't get it. What does spirituality have to do with it? I didn't get it. And also, what does my behavior in this lane have to do with that? Right? There's an aphorism in Alcoholics Anonymous, which is the only thing you have to change is everything. And they used to think, that's so stupid. Here I am saying it. This will impact more of your life than you may have yet come to see. And I don't tell you that to scare you, but just to invite you to the scope of the potential that this has to do more. It has the potential to provide unseen glory and benefits, wider and deeper. And 28 days is a joke compared to what the scope of time is that is relevant to what I'm discussing right now. We have people who are here today to mark 1, 2, 5, and 8 years. Now those are some amazing milestones in terms of punching the clock of addiction recovery. My brother James, who's clean and sober 40 plus years, used to have a saying, I don't know if he uses it anymore, it's I get another quarter to put in the jukebox today. And his thing is one day at a time. The extent to which this can yield harvest is remarkable, especially when I realize it's not only about the not drinking or the not using or the not gambling or the not whatever. So the scope can unfold over a greater period of time. And here's the good news, you don't have to fix everything right away. You can allow the gradual infiltration into the various domains of your life to unfold in a sort of natural, organic way. And I promise you it will. Wisdom speaks to to acceptance. And so this is like the acceptance pill is not just a pill, shouldn't use the pill. The acceptance fact is not just a thing that needs to be swallowed once. Like I think of the Matrix, blue pill, red pill, right? But it's this emerging, growing awareness. Oh my gosh, all this, every area of my life was tainted with the implication of my having addiction, have this function in my life. And one of the things I batted about for a long time this week was discomfort, because I think that this is tremendously important, and I didn't get it at the beginning, was that the journey of acceptance is easy when it's easy. It's a non-issue. The real challenge of acceptance is when it's really hard to accept whatever it is that you're being forced to accept. And that's when the craving for a drink or a drug or any sort of self-soothing, get me the hell out of this feeling is activated. So, I feel like there's a really scary message if I let myself think about it, and okay, but so my point is, those of you who are just new, if you're just fresh, and you can actually hear me, which you may not be able to, which is some grace in that, but anyway, there's tough stuff ahead. It is really, like the journey of sobriety involves the toleration of discomfort as a part and parcel of what it means. So when somebody dies, or you find out you have cancer, or you recognize that you're in some complete mess in some area of your life. I had a whole story I was going to tell about when I was a business owner as a young man, and I was in complete vagueness about how, and the lack of technology hurt the clarity thing. But it was very uncomfortable when I started doing my numbers. I started looking at what the real story was, and I could have just turtled and gone back to pretending it wasn't a problem. But the journey out of it got me to the point where I could sell that business and go to seminary, and here I am. So the toleration of unpleasantness is part of this journey. And no, this is nice, easy segue to my next little quick thing, which is no acceptance aphorism of, it is what it is, or everybody is in the same boat, or whatever. You can't wallpaper over the challenge of being really sober in a real world that sucks a lot of the time. And there's a phenomenon in our term called spiritual bypass, which my guess is most of you would not know in the room. But spiritual bypass is this awareness that came in the 1970s in this really interesting school of transpersonal psychology out in California, the hippie, right just after the whole hippie, LSD craze. The transpersonal psychological school started realizing that people were using faith statements and God is in control and I just turned it all over in a way that was ingenuine. It was not, it was a misuse of faith and spirituality to say, I just turned everything over to God and I just, just is what it is. As the spiral continues. That's a choice, yes, but it's a Leo Booth wrote a really interesting book many years ago that was a favorite of Father Bill's, which was about religious addiction. It's an addiction choice, right? To be addicted to the idea that God fixes everything in some Santa Claus way is an unrealistic and unsophisticated and unwise spiritual move. So what is the wise spiritual trajectory if you're waking up to the reality of addiction in some first way or in a more substantial way as the journey continues? Because it will continue to present itself and you find yourself really uncomfortable, maybe filled with shame or whatever. So two things, I think, and they come from me I'm deeply trained in the Christian tradition, and I know some of the writers really well. It's really informed how I am spiritually, but I'm also trained as an interfaith minister, like my friend Tina at the back, and I've read a lot of other traditions, and I've dabbled in a lot of practices. And I think the use of this general notion of acceptance, which is not one thing, but you find acceptance in Eastern and Western traditions, it's secular and sacred, in psychology and philosophy. Anyway, so what's your point, Jack? The point is two things. I'm thinking of Paul Tillich, who is a writer, and a couple other people in the Christian neo-orthodoxy movement of the early part of the 20th century, who wrote about acceptance of our own worth and value in relation to God. And the thing that we reject if we accept this thing is the I am a worm, I am no good stance. The like, oh, I'm such a grievous sinner, or I'm outside of the scope of grace or whatever. And Tillich and Barth and Bonhoeffer and others in this small school of German neo-orthodoxy, you can look at why it was a focus for them. But their point was, and standing on the backs of the Hebrew tradition that this tradition emerged out of, was we are children made in the image and likeness of God. There's an inherent spark of goodness in each and every one of you, and even in the terrible characters of human history, the vile and the despised, are worthy of appreciation as sacred beings, because inherent with being is beauty and worth. This has become an integral part of my creed and my practice, and one of the things I really enjoy sometimes, don't take this the wrong way, but is discovering worth in you when it may not be immediately apparent. And I've never been really disappointed in that. I spend enough time with somebody, I'm like, oh, I can see this is like this. There's that spark of inherent worth and value. And I don't know. I bet there may be people here today who are not feeling beloved, who are not feeling worthy of being beloved. And I think wisdom would say, that's an unwise stance. It doesn't take care of everything in that spiritual bypass way, but it's an important starting point to realize you are worthy of love. You're worthy of taking up the air that you take up in the space on the planet. And you are worthy of dreaming and hoping and believing in a better chapter ahead. And if you can accept that, wow, that's such a powerful grace. It's such a great moment to start thinking, I should not spend the rest of my life in prison or drooling in wet brain state or under the ground, And so there's a spark of hope in the fundamental reality of you as a beautiful being in this universe of such beauty and wonder and pain. The second thing that I think wisdom teaches, I'm trying to say this thing really briefly, and I think, so my first thing is you are worthy. The second is we can do more than I can do alone. We are communal beings, and that belonging is here for all of us, and it's in the experience of safety and risking letting yourself be loved that you have the capacity to overcome what otherwise may have seemed an inescapable trap. So remember, addiction was where we started. How do I find my way out of addiction? Believe that you are loved and that you are lovable, and you have made a huge start. Because it's really powerful shame that infiltrates the downward spiral. And the upward turn requires these two things, that you are worthy enough to be a recipient of love, and that there are people who you can risk allowing to love you. And that's often a really tough thing if you're a trauma survivor or you're just so down on yourself. But this is one of the reasons why, and I will finish up, the magic of recovery. People are like, what is the weird thing that causes this thing that I used every day for 17 years and now I've been sober for 35. It's it just doesn't make sense. But also there are those years, so the 1, 2, 5, 8-year anniversaries, probably those people would say that we didn't see the recovery as an obvious next step in their lives. What is it that makes it possible? I believe the secret ingredient is community, it's love, it's belonging, it's solidarity, it's coordinated effort. And that can be in Alcoholics Anonymous, it can be in Recovery Dharma, it could be in Smart Recovery, it could be in the various other mutual support flavors. But interestingly, I can say that now with solid research behind me, that there's evidence that therapy or medication approaches to addiction don't have as powerful an outcome result if they don't also include mutual support. And mutual support alone will outpace the therapy and medication approaches. So those of you who are wondering what is the most important thing I can do, it's allow yourself to belong. Allow yourself to belong. And if you're like, oh, I don't know if I'm worthy, guess what? That's where this message really can hit home. You are worth allowing yourself to be loved. And the poetry of that strikes me as, I'm so happy that just tumbled out of my mouth, because that is the essence to me of the acceptance message. Acceptance is less important to me about what's around you and more about who you are and who's around you. And we cannot fix the politics, we cannot fix the media, we cannot fix the various other things, and the things that you may wish to fix and that are actually somewhat in your scope will take a lot of time to sort of pull back into sanity. Like if you're a hoarder, cleaning that up takes a while. If your finances are in a horrible disarray, there's no and you're waiting for the lottery to win. You're being unskillful. That's spiritual bypass of another sort. So it's inching towards wellness and sanity in these other ways. But you must believe in your worth in order to undertake the hard work of the journey. And you can believe in your worth more if you will put yourself around other people who have experienced the miracle. So that's why you're here, really. I mean, in a funny way, that's why Caron exists, is because it creates a contact where you can come into contact with other people who have experienced this extraordinary transformation. Wow, this message actually makes sense. So, welcome to this place where the fundamental truth of the reality of your despair becomes a pathway towards the fundamental truth of your worth and value and the reality that there are other people who can help you. Don't try and do it alone. Let's get and stay sober together one day at a time. Thanks so much.